Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. It's Pat DeCerbo. The most fascinating podcast in the world has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the people that agree to talk to me. Today, I have John Doolittle, who is a very fascinating person. He's done a lot in a short time, and he is doing really great work, which I could tell you about, but we're going to let him tell us about it. Welcome, John. Thank you for coming on the program.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me some time on your show. I really appreciate being here.
My pleasure. And just full disclosure, we don't really know each other. We have a friend in common who's also been on the podcast, Vince Hafley, who talked a lot about his journey and mental health and suicide prevention and stuff like that. And John's work and Vince's work have some overlap, I would say. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
But Vince was just telling me one day, if you want to see someone who's doing really great work, you should talk to John. And I was like, okay, who's John? So here we are. As I mentioned before we talked on the air, I often ask people about their earliest memories. What do you remember as a small child? Where did you grow up, and what do you remember?
I was born in San Antonio, Texas. My dad was Air Force in 1969 at Lackland Air Force Base. And I'm the oldest of two siblings. My sister, Tori, and her family live in Santa Rosa, California. My parents both live in Bodega Harbor, north of San Francisco in Northern California. I was raised in Northern California in Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill, Concord area, what a lot of people call the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm exposed to a lot of outdoorsy type stuff growing up. My dad ended up, after Vietnam, joined the reserves and then worked for Pacific Telephone and then later Southwest Bell. And he also was a ski patrol in Lake Tahoe. So we would spend a lot of our winters in Lake Tahoe. And the summers, we'd spend a lot of time out in the ocean, surfing. I was a swimmer growing up, swam through high school and everything. Ended up going to the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1988 and graduated from there. And we can get into that if you want. But yeah, my earliest memory, to get after your question, is probably just being with young friends in Pleasant Hill, California, and swimming at Pleasant Hill Aquatics and just running around doing kid stuff with no phones and no parental oversight other than, be home before the sun goes down or you're not getting any dinner. And that was it was a pretty hands-off parenting back then. And really enjoyed growing up in that era and in that part of the country.
Did you ride bikes?
Of
Is
course.
that how you got around?
Yeah, we rode bikes everywhere. Nobody knew what a bicycle helmet was. Those were things guys in the Olympics wore for downhill ski racing. And we'd take our bikes and just go around Contra Costa County. I mean, sometimes we'd ride up to the top of Mount Diablo and our parents would have no idea where we were. I miss those days. Even as a parent now, so we live in St. Petersburg, Florida. Got three kids, Sean, Ryan, Meg, 23, 21, and 18. Ryan and Meg are students at Auburn University. And Sean graduated from University of Central Florida, UCF. And yeah, it's my wife and I both are working, and yeah, loving Florida. A little different in California, but I'm loving Florida.
Hmm. How did you end up there?
Well, so I went to the Air Force Academy. Um, Graduated there in 1992, and I graduated and did what's known as an inter-service transfer. So I transferred into the Navy, and the idea was to transfer into the Navy and go to SEAL training. Of course, it didn't end up working out that way. I went into the dive and salvage Navy, the hard hat dive school, and everything that came with that. Worked on a hard hat diving vessel, a
How
diving
did you
ship.
decide to do that? Like you wanted to go right into the Navy SEAL program and they said this would be an alternative
Well, turns out it's kind of a funny story. There actually were four of us in the 92 year group that all wanted to go into the SEAL teams in 1992. And that had never happened before in the history of cross commissioning guys going to BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition School. So once the detailers that control what officers go into what billets, once they realized that they had four Air Force's Zoomies coming into the BUDS program, they cut it in half. So the two guys that had gone to what's called mini buds, and so it's kind of like a miniature summer program the year before. Two guys had done that, and two of us had not done that. So the two guys that went to mini buds got to go be in class. That was class 186, and I went into the salvage Navy and submitted an application packet to go to SEAL training every 6 months for 3.5 years. And finally, after getting denied 6 times, on
on
the
what
seventh
basis
time,
do they deny you? Is it your experience or are you taking a physical test that they say, nah, he's not a fit or what?
yeah, the physical readiness test is a big part of it, and my scores were really, really good, very competitive. Um, but officers going into BUDS classes, they're few and far between. So you might have, let's just use round numbers. For 100 people in a BUDS class, two, three, maybe four will be officers. So it's competitive to get those slots. And the Naval Academy guys would get first dibs, and then Naval ROTC guys then they would get pulled in, and an inter-service transfer did not rank very, very high. So,
What's
you
the
know, it
line
just,
of reasoning on that? In other words, why are there
yeah.
so few officers?
Um,
Do they
well,
not want officers
the
or
way the SEAL teams are broken out, it probably very similar to a lot of other military organizations. It's probably 5 to 10% are officers and the rest are enlisted force. That's just a very round number off the top of my head. It might be more than that, depending what service and what MOS or what job you're talking about. But in general, there's just many more enlisted guys than the officers. But one of the unique things of SEAL training is the officers in the enlisted force go through the training together. So you forge some pretty strong bonds going through the same training uh, together. But just few officers. We started with I think it was 185, and we ended up graduating about 31. And of that 31, two were officers.
wow?
So,
And you were
and
one
of
of
that
them.
31, some of them were not originals. Some of them rolled in from injuries from previous classes. So the attrition rate is pretty high, but it's high. I would say all of the assessment and selection programs in the special operations world. So whether we were talking Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, all the special operations components, they have a high attrition rate. So the guys that go through the special tactics school for the Air Force, also very high attrition rate. It's tough training. It's tough physically. It's tougher emotionally and mentally, I would say.
So, what happens to people? I like to say, and I have no idea what you went through. I've read a ton. I've read all these books by Navy SEALs, Howard Wasden, and
Don't believe
obviously
everything you read.
Marcus Luttrell, and who's the guy who got Obama, the Irishman. All these people I read about. Chris Kyle. He
Mm.
wasn't a SEAL though, was he?
Oh yeah, he was.
Oh, he was.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, forgive
Yeah.
me. So I've read like 10 books, but I call it that something happens when people get galvanized at some point. Something just hardens, I feel like, in them, where no matter what, they're not going to quit.
Mm.
What happens? Like, what happened to you? Like, can you think of a particular moment in your training when you just said, I don't care what they do to me, I'm not quitting. I'm not going to ring that bell.
I think for me personally, and it's different for everybody that goes through the training, but for me personally, I had to make that decision before I ever walked across the threshold of the quarterdeck. The entry to that line of work. And for me, if I didn't have it set that way in my mind already, that no matter what, I would not quit. For me, it would have been too easy because things get hard right out of the gate. It's, physically and mentally, it gets difficult very quick. And if you don't have that mental perspective to fall back on when things get really uncomfortable, then it's just too easy to say, "Hey, this isn't for me." So, yes, I had to create that mindset in myself before I ever showed up there. So, I would say months before I even got there, that's where I was mentally and emotionally. Some guys don't figure that piece out until they get there, and they get exposed to Hell Week. And Hell Week is you got 3 phases of training, and Hell Week's the sort of the crucible of the first phase, is the toughest part of the first phase. And of all the people that get lost out of a class, probably 90% of those that leave during Hell Week, during those 6 days. And 6 days, very little sleep, constant movement. You're always cold, wet, and sandy, cold, wet, miserable. And but they feed you well. They do feed you well. But yeah, it's pretty miserable. And when you start experiencing the lack of sleep, especially if you've never experienced it before, that combination of lack of sleep and cold water, because Pacific Ocean, anywhere from 55 to 60 degrees, kind of depending what time of year your class is. But the cold water and the lack of sleep, yeah, I would say that's why most people leave. It's just a really uncomfortable scenario. But you learn a lot about yourself, for sure. You learn a lot about those around you. You become very, very close friends with those that you go through that experience with. Forge some pretty tight bonds that I still have today. I could call guys from my buds class, and without skipping a beat, they would fly across country and help me out, and vice versa. If I got a call, I'd be there in a heartbeat. It's something about going through that shared misery together and coming out the other side together. It really forms a special bond. And, you see a lot of that outside the military as well, with some of these, I kind of call them tribes, um, firefighting, first responders, police officers, um, especially guys that are exposed to trauma during their career. It's really important to have um, those relationships to fall back on, because when things and Vince and I talk about this all the time. He talks about stress and burnout and suicide ideations and all that. And we all go through these different stressors in life. And I think when you're talking about our first responders and the trauma they're exposed to, um, that's definitely something you want a baseline, uh, a friendship, teammates, tribe, something to fall back on when things get tough.
So the question I asked was, when did you get galvanized? And you said before I went in, but
Yeah,
it occurs to me that all 160, did you say? How many
yeah,
go in?
185. Sir,
185.
185.
I mean, with few exceptions, all 185 are, maybe it's false bravado, but they're all saying, no way, no how am I going to quit, right? And
True.
then they quit. So what is the difference between me saying
I'd
I'm going
say
to do it?
the first guys that you lose are the individuals. So you learn really quick when you're in that training curriculum that you cannot do it alone. Now, you'll have people that come in, and we had arena football, we had semi pro hockey, soccer, um, incredible track athletes, decathletes, Ironman triathletes. I mean, we had all shapes and sizes and all kinds of physical specimens that came in that 180 plus folks that came through the door. Um, Wrestlers, water polo players, all this stuff. Um, but a lot of them were fabulous athletes, and they were fabulous individual athletes and physical specimens. Um, but that's not what the program's looking for. They're not looking for individuals that can go and do something by themselves. They're looking for somebody to lean on their teammates, or to be somebody that a teammate can lean on, and when things get really difficult. Physically, for sure, at Buds, they really hammer home the physical part, but you quickly learn that the emotional, psychological, behavioral health, however you want to say it, that's a piece of it as well. And the
Sounds like
individuals, yeah, go ahead, Pat.
sounds like more importantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you learn really quick that the human body can do more than you think it can. You learn that over and over throughout training, even before you get into Hell Week. You don't think you can do any more, and you can edge out just a little more physical effort. You learn that pretty quick. But what I don't think most people learn, I didn't really until Hell Week, was how valuable the mindset is, and how much more powerful the mind is than the body, because the body will physically quit, but if your mind doesn't take that for an answer and says, no, 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 we're going to go a little bit more, a little bit further, then your body, for some reason, it's pretty amazing, will rally around that cause. And next thing you know, you'll be able to do things that you didn't think you could do before. And what they're really good at doing at Bud's training is taking you to that threshold of where you've never gone before, and taking you just a little bit more. And then the next day, doing the same thing, but a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, to the point where when you come out of that pipeline of training, you feel almost invincible. And you're surrounded by a lot of guys that feel the same way, and it's a very, very powerful thing. You learn quickly that with a small group of like-minded guys like that, you can really achieve incredible outcomes. It's kind of like a 1 + 1 = 3.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
But but your
It was a long
orient
time ago.
pardon me?
It was a long time ago.
But but your orientation is to the group. In other words, I come in as
Yeah.
an individual. I happen to be a triathlete and I'm a
Okay.
wrestler, so I believe me, I know the personality types.
Yeah.
But your
Yeah.
orientation is to the group because you
Yeah.
feel invincible, but as a group, as
Hmm.
opposed to I'm thinking. Well, I could be
Yeah.
wrong. I think I heard you.
Everything is hammered home, team, swim pair, swim buddy. You never do anything alone. If you ever get caught doing anything alone, you get hammered for it. But those are the guys that leave first, are the individuals. And the
Mm-hmm.
instructors can smell them out. It's like blood in the water.
Mm.
And once they see those guys, they're all over it. And they have their little games that they can play and really expose that. And then those guys end up leaving on their own accord. Then the guys that you lose after that are those that physically um, it's just way harder than they were expecting physically. And then you lose those guys, and then you get the guys that, and cold water is a very powerful tool for getting into somebody's psyche, or that emotional behavioral health kind of neck up headspace. And cold water, a lot of people will leave because of cold water. And there's a lot of games the instructors will play with that. Yeah, Bud stories.
I bet. Do you have any stories you can share, like that are?
Oh my God, I'm looking at a picture right now of my old coach, my old swim coach, Mike Troy. He passed away in 2019, but he was a two-tour SEAL in Vietnam. Um, After he won 2 gold medals in the 1960 Olympics in Rome. He was a world record holder in the 200-meter fly and a relay, and came out of the Olympics. Went to a officer commissioning school for the Navy, and went to SEAL training. Became a SEAL back when it was UDT and SEALs. He was both. He did both the underwater demolition teams, and then later went into SEAL teams. Did 2 tours in Vietnam, came back from that, and ended up being a swim coach. And later on, I swam under him. But that guy, he used to tell us stories, especially on Saturday mornings, because when you're a swimmer, you got your morning workouts, you got your afternoon workouts, but your Saturday morning workouts were the long ones. And where he had you for a long time, and he'd just sit there in between sets, and he'd tell stories. And one of his stories was during Hell Week, and every Hell Week has this. I can't remember which day or which night it's on, but they take all the students and they make this big bonfire, and they sit, and everybody's been wet, sandy, cold. Everybody's just freaking miserable, and it's been probably 4 or 5 days at this point, and they build this giant bonfire in the middle of the beach, and they sit all the class that's left, they sit them all around this big bonfire, and they said, you can sit in front of this fire and relax as long as you want, but you can't fall asleep. If you fall asleep, wet and sandy, hit the surf. So what Mike had done, he knew about this. So what he had done is he had snuck in his uniform some riggers tape, which is basically black duct tape. And he leans over to his swim buddy and he goes, hey, trust me. We're going to tape our eyes. We're going to tape our eyes open, and we'll just sleep, but we'll have our eyes taped wide open. and his swim buddy, who I've met, he's still alive. And he's like, Mike, you're insane. They're going to hammer us. He's like, no, no, no. It's going to work. I promise. I promise. And everybody was like, you can't do that. You're going to get the whole class in trouble. And they only had enough tape for the two of them, for enough for 4 eyes. And so they did it. There's like, screw you guys. We're going to do it. Swim buddies stick together. So the two of them, they tape their eyes open. And the instructors are just walking around and they're leaning against each other and they're out, just out cold. But their eyes are taped open. And the instructors came up to them and they looked at them. They kind of threw some sand on their thing. Nothing. I mean, sand in the eye and they just started laughing. There's like, man, let them go. Let them go. For the whole evolution, those two got to sleep for the entire time. So Mike told me a story. So I'm getting ready to go to Bud's. I'm like, hey, Mike, I want to try the rigger's tape. He's like, oh, I don't know if it'll work these days. Blah, blah, blah. And yeah, didn't work.
That's a
But yeah, I
good
miss
story.
that guy. He used to just tell, he would never tell like Vietnam stories for obvious reasons, a bunch of kids. But man, he loved telling UDT training and SEAL training stories. Yeah, I miss that guy.
Sounds like a super versatile person. I mean, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and then why don't I go join the SEALs? So how did you? How long did you spend in the dive program after the Air Force Academy before they accepted you into the SEALs? Did you tell me that?
Took me about just over 4 years to get the buds.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that because when you're an ensign for 2 years, then you're a lieutenant junior grade for 2 years, and I showed up to buds as a lieutenant. So it had been at least 4.5 years. And yeah, so I was the senior guy in our class, so I was the class officer. And, the most senior officer is the class officer, and then you have a leading petty officer, your senior enlisted guy, and then you run the class as best you can, and get ready for a fun career.
How long were you in for?
I graduated in 92 and I retired in 2017, so a little over 25 years. And then went to work for a small company called Katsu. Worked for them for 8 years, and now I work at the Florida Chamber of Commerce, heading up their health council. And that's how I met Vince. And a lot of what we focus on is in the behavioral health space in the private sector.
I've never heard of anything like that in the Chamber of Commerce. Is that common around the country? Okay.
No, we're the first ones to do it, and it's kind of a convoluted story how I ended up there. They do a leadership conference every year at Disney World, and they asked me to come because I'll do some public speaking every once in a while. And I love doing like pro bono public speaking for college, university kids. Nothing against the ladies, but I really like going and talking to young men that are in that 18 to 25 year bracket. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things to do is the University of Auburn. Auburn University. They bring me in every year to speak to a program. It's called the Auburn Man Program, and I speak with all of the pledges in all of the Greek system. They put them all in one room. It's like 1,200 kids, young men, and they put them all in the room. And then what I do is I talk to them about lessons I've learned over the course of my career that I wish somebody had told me when I was their age, sitting in their seats. And so anyway, the chamber has this leadership conference, and they asked me to come and talk about leadership. And the first day, the keynote was a guy you may have heard of, Michael Phelps, one of my heroes.
Mm.
And so I go to listen to Michael Phelps the day before I'm supposed to speak. And I had in my head, I had a PowerPoint, and I was going to talk about all this leadership stuff. And I go to listen to Michael tell his story. And I had no idea how close that man had been to dying by suicide. When Michael Phelps talks about his suicide ideations and how bad it got for him and how close he was, I mean, he had he had it fully planned. And, a guy like him, very unique personality. Thankfully, he was able to get the professional help he needed. And now his foundation is all about behavioral health and mental health struggles for not just athletes, but about anybody that needs help. But it was fascinating because I had no idea. I knew there had been some mental health issues with him, but I had no idea how bad it had been. I think he had 3 full-blown suicide ideation episodes, if I remember correctly. But what really struck me was how fully planned they were, and how now everything he's doing with his foundation is to help others avoid those pitfalls those demons that he was dealing with. So anyway, that night I went back to the room, and I was like, okay, I'm still going to talk about leadership. I'm going to add another piece. And the piece I added was about a good friend of mine, Joe Price. And I'll tell you his story. Guy went to the Air Force Academy. We were there together. He graduated the year after me. He went to SEAL training. We both worked at SEAL Team 2 together, and we sort of mirrored each other's officer careers in the teams on and off over the years. And then when he was the commanding officer of SEAL Team 4, he went to Afghanistan with minus one of his task units. One of his units came to work for me. I was also a commanding officer, came to work for our unit in Germany. So I had 2 of his platoons working for us in Germany, and then we had some of our guys working for him down in Afghanistan. So we would every week, every Wednesday or whatever it was, we would have a face phone, a VTC, a video teleconference, kind of like you and I are doing right now, Pat. And he would want to know how his guys were doing. I'd want to know how our guys were doing down there. And early on in their deployment, they had a troops in contact. They had a mission that went bad, and they lost a guy, SEAL. And then soon after that, they lost somebody else. And then I would have these interactions with him, and he was blaming himself. He was not getting good sleep. He was on a bunch of weird meds. He was not working out anymore. And I could just see him kind of circling the drain, so to speak. And then they had another event at about the 3-month mark where they lost 2 more guys. So 4 killed in action before the halfway point on that deployment. And I remember I was in Germany, and Sean, our oldest kid, he was young, but this was December 2012. So it was like 13 years ago. And I'm taking Sean to a birthday party, and my phone rings. My BlackBerry, back then there was Blackberries. My BlackBerry rings, and I look down on it, and we're in Germany, and I see the area code from Virginia Beach. which is where our administrative control is. So my operational command was there in Germany, and then our administrative command was back in Virginia Beach. And I recognized the numbers, Virginia Beach, which, on a Saturday morning, that's not good news, because it's the middle of the night back in Virginia Beach. I pick up the phone, and it's a buddy of mine, and I say, "Hey, Jamie, what's going on?" And I knew it was bad news. And he said, "Hey, John, I got bad news. I want you to hear it from me first." And I said, "Oh man, okay." And he says, "Yeah, it was Job." And I was like, "What? Job Price?" I mean, I get it. It's Afghanistan. It's combat operations, but he's the commanding officer, and he may have gone on an operation. But even if he was on an operation, he would have been in the back of the train. He would have been back in the vehicles, or doing the command and control, or talking to the fast movers, talking to the helos, and all this stuff. He would have been controlling things in the rear, sort of, while the guys were doing whatever needed to get done. And I was like, "What, Job? How what are you talking about?" And then the next thing that he said took the wind right out of my sails. He said, "Hey, John, what you need to know is it appears that Job died by his own hand, by a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head." And I just remember, like, man, that guy was on his 14th deployment. One of the toughest guys I knew in the teams. Very well respected, but resilient. He was known as being a resilient guy. He was known as putting his hand up when he was at JSOC, at the Joint Special Operations Command, and they needed a guy with short notice. His hand would be the first to go up, and they'd send him. And it was like this sudden epiphany right on that phone call. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. If it can happen to Joe Price, it can happen to anybody. Nobody's immune. And that part of the talk, I think, is why the chamber reached out to me later and said, "Hey, we'd like to come we'd like you to interview for a position." And I said, "Oh, what kind of position would this be?" And they said, "Well, we want you to interview to run our health council." I said, "Okay, well, first of all, I have a job." And second of all, I'm not a medical practitioner by any stretch. I've had 13 orthopedic surgeries, but I don't have any background in medical insurance, medical malpractice, medical anything. And they said, "Yeah, but what you talked about with your friend and what he struggled with, and the job you did at SOCOM." So I didn't talk about this, but I'll give you a little insight on my last job at U.S. Special Operations Command at U.S. SOCOM. Was running a program called the Preservation of the Force and Family, so acronym POTF. And the POTF program, the idea was to ensure that all the operational units and families had what they need from a spiritual perspective, from a family social perspective, from a human performance perspective, and maybe most importantly, from a behavioral health and psychological health perspective. And what happened was, in December 2012, when Job died by suicide, it kind of it opened this conversation across the SEAL teams and across U.S. Special Operations. Not that Job was any more valuable or different than any of the other suicides we'd had, but we started really looking at, well, wait a minute, how bad is the suicide problem in U.S. Special Operations? And in 2012, 2012, when you looked at all the numbers, we had the worst as a rate of completed suicides to the number of people in the organization. We had the worst suicide rate of any U.S. federal entity or organization in America. So U.S. Special Operations Command higher suicide rate than any of the other services, than any of the other commands in the services. USAID, CIA, FBI, any of the three-letter or agencies, U.S. Special Operations Command had the worst suicide rate in 2012. And so the job I had when I got the SOCOM was to go to Congress and work with them to try and get the more resources that we needed embedded in these operational commands, specifically behavioral health professionals and human performance professionals and nutritionists and help for the families, which is family readiness type stuff, spiritual readiness, not religious, but spiritual, right? So it was a fascinating time because we had the numbers to stand behind, saying, look, we're not saying that what the services already give us is bad. It's not. It's good, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And you can see it with what's going on with the number of suicide ideations and completed suicides throughout special operations. So when you take that combined with the talk on Job, I said, well, this sounds interesting. So I drove to Tallahassee and did a nice long interview there at the Chamber of Commerce. And yeah, that was 7-8 months ago. And what we're doing there at the Chamber is taking some of that approach that we were doing in special operations and seeing what, if any, of that can apply in the private sector. Because one of the things we say at the Chamber, and Vince and I have talked about this, there is no health without mental health. You can be a physical paragon stud example of fitness, but if you don't have your periodic neck up checkups and you're not taking care of your headspace, it doesn't matter. So if you don't have the behavioral health and the mental health right, then you'll never have the physical health right. And that approach, we consider that integrative care. It's kind of whole person care. When you look at the traditional Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance model, not saying all the time, because there are some organizations that are navigating through this pretty well, but for the most part, you have your physical health on one side of the ledger, and you have this behavioral health, mental health as almost a separate and distinct conversation. And the insurance and the CPT codes and the system is set up for the physical health side. And there's not a whole lot of support on the behavioral health side. And one of our goals throughout the state of Florida, and we're starting small and we're having some successes. One of our big goals is to have this whole person capability or integrative health capability where you can go to a primary care facility, but also get behavioral health care at the same facility through the same insurance models. So it involves policy adjustments. And if there's one thing the Florida Chamber of Commerce is good at, it's influencing policy. And I'm learning, I'm learning a lot. It's a great organization, and I think we're doing some good work.
That's terrific. It's important work. I feel like there's a lot of shame around it. Like people don't want to talk about it, especially men.
Stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You ever listen to any of the early Brene Brown talks on YouTube? Do you know who
Say
that
the name
is?
again.
Brene, Brene, Brown,
No, writing it
Brown.
down though.
It's really good stuff. She talks about shame and vulnerability. And one of my favorite lines of hers, she says, after concluding years of research, she realized that without, if you want love and connection, you have to find them at the altar of shame and vulnerability. That's sort of how she puts it.
I've heard Vince say that before.
Yeah. My guess is he may have gotten it from her, but who knows? Maybe she got it from him. She's quite famous. Like if
No,
you
no, no.
listen,
I'm pretty sure he got it from her. If say it again. If you want
if
love
you
and
want love and
connection,
connection, you will find them at the altar of shame and vulnerability. Because
uh,
she's like, I want love and connection, but I don't want to have to deal with the mess. Like her idea of a mess, she's like a research scientist, but she's a psychology or psychiatry orientation. And she's like, I don't want the mess. I want to put it in a bento box. And if you listen to like her first speech, she's wearing this brown dress. It's like a little bit unflattering. It's kind of like a burlap bag dress. I hope she doesn't hear this. But it's like when she's first getting started, right? And she does a TED talk and it's like 15 minutes maybe, 12 minutes, something like that. And it's so powerful. I watched it 100 times. It's very good. It moved me deeply.
you want love and connection, you'll find it at the altar of shame and vulnerability. Hmm.
In other
It's
words, if you're
interesting because the counseling that I've personally gone through in my time after coming out of the teens, and everybody needs, I feel, something when you live that life long enough and you're living in disrupted sleep cycles and in this state of hypervigilance and everything that goes with that, you definitely need some. I feel I needed some kind of professional deprogramming. Sounds very, very negative, so maybe that's not the right way to say it, but just somebody to help talk through some of the shame for sure.
so the problem I see just in my everyday life and also with when I know some people like yourself and like we're held in our minds to this
Mm-hmm.
standard of perfectionism. And I like to I'm a drunk. I don't know if I told you that, but I go to AA meetings.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I can't drink safely. So I don't drink. And
Got it. Got it. Got it.
one time I
Good.
was in an AA meeting and I said something about being flawed and I just make the same mistakes over and over again in my life. And this guy said, just because I'm flawed doesn't mean I'm worthless. And I realized that that's where my brain would go. In other words, I could find all this proof in my life of my worthlessness, my flawed nature. And the
Mm-hmm.
minute I would do that, no matter how good my life was going, 99 things good, one thing bad. I'm going to focus on that one thing bad.
On
There's
the
my
one bad.
flaw. Therefore, I'm worthless. My brain went, and you can feel this in yourself. And that's what
Yeah.
happens when you're malnourished, when you're tired, when you're cold, when you're feeling guilt because in Job's example, I
Mm.
lost not one but two but three but four. And all that is just proof of my worthlessness. If I'm all of the, you know what I mean? That's what the brain does, in my
Mm.
opinion. At least that's what my brain does to me. And I feel like other people are similar. So I
Well, I
needed
think you're onto something with that, or she is, because the when you come face to face with the things that have caused you shame over the course of a career like this, um, and you open yourself and be vulnerable, uh, especially once you can get past sort of this stigma of getting professional help, unquote. Um, it's super powerful and
so
liberating.
for me, it's all about surrender. Like AA, the first
Yeah,
step is I I'm powerless
acknowledge it.
over alcohol and my life had become unmanageable. Like to me, it's just a metaphor. And this might be blasphemy for people in AA, right? But to me, I'm powerless over everything. And my life is always unmanageable because that's the nature of nature. That's entropy. Everything order turns to disorder unless we're like keeping track of everything all the time. So we're
Mm.
always trying to keep something on the track. And the minute it gets off the track, we have disorder. So acceptance of entropy as a constant, disorder is a constant, and just accepting the fact that life is crazy. You have a great laugh, like you start out, you're very articulate and you laugh, and it's funny. It's a really interesting combination. But I feel like maybe you weren't always, maybe you didn't always have a laugh. I don't know, but you seem really comfortable with yourself. Um, but it's not a casualness, like you're very serious and you're methodical and stuff like that, but you seem happy to me. And I feel like a lot of people can't laugh. If you like look around at your friends, like they don't laugh easily. They're
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
tight.
yeah, yeah.
I shouldn't presume anything. If I look around at my friends, some of them, I look at this thing like the world is 6 billion years old. In a
Yeah.
100 years, no one's gonna know much about you and me. And I feel
Right,
like,
right, right.
yes, we're leaving a legacy and all that, but I just want to be present and happy in the moment to the extent that it's possible. And I had no idea our conversation would go quite this way, but
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like you're being so useful to humanity, in my opinion. I just think there's such a need for this. And I joke around with my friends. I'm like, it's too bad that you have to be a drunk to go to AA because
Uh,
everyone needs this stuff. And I also say, people say keep your comments to alcohol related so and so. And I'm like, it's not alcohol for me. It's the human condition. And the human condition is not curable. But with maintenance, I can carry on another day. And A is super useful to me in that way. But I feel like everyone has the affliction of the human condition, but only a very small percentage of the population goes to AA. And to me, that's a problem.
how many years you been sober?
If I make it to December 29th, it'll be 12 years.
Woo! That's awesome.
And so
That's awesome.
I was a,
Congratulations.
reasonably happy drunk, but no good at it. And I got
Yeah.
headbutted in the face at a football game, and that was that. My wife said, "This is your fault," and I said, "No, I'm a victim. Don't you see? Someone headbutted me."
Mm.
And she said, "No, it's all your fault, and it could have been worse." I was like, I feel unfairly
Yeah.
maligned.
Yeah. Extreme ownership.
There you go.
Owning it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a problem with that, but I'm learning. Every day I learn
Yeah.
to surrender. I got to go back to step one every day, you know? And if I can let go of that ego, then I can
Mm.
accept all this stuff. For me, other people are different, but for me, that's. And when Brene Brown said that in her TED talk, I was, I came unglued. I was in my kitchen alone. My wife and kids were away. And I just found myself in my kitchen sobbing. And I watched it over and over and over again.
Mm.
And now I talk about it whenever I can. I did not expect to talk about it today, however.
Well, I'm
I'm
gonna
glad we
watch it
are.
after we're done. I'm gonna watch it. Looking forward to it.
I think you'll
Um,
like it. I'm sorry I interrupted.
no, no, I'm I'll just run. I'll sit here and run my suck all afternoon, man, if you let me. Oh, but where else did you want to go?
I think this is great. I mean, feel like you're
Okay.
doing so much good, and I just got off. I just felt like I feel like when you listen to Brene Brown, you might feel like I do. And what do you see yourself doing from here? What can you see yourself here for the long haul at the moment, like next 10, 15, 20 years? I feel like you could build something huge from this.
Yeah, I think there's real potential to, we have 67 counties in the state, and there's a few counties that are doing some really valuable integrative, we talked about the integrative whole person care, and there's some places that are already doing it. Two come to mind: the healthcare district of Palm Beach County. That's a very valuable integrative care model. The Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County. That's an integrative care model, but more focused on the kids and the pediatric side. And I feel pretty strongly, especially when we're talking about kids, 40% of the kids in this state have a behavioral health need. Majority of them are unmet behavioral health needs. So, we're moving close to being almost half of the kids in this state having behavioral health and mental health problems. I mean, it is a massive undertaking. And one of my favorite bosses, Eric Olson, he's a retired 4-star outlaw. He used to say all the time, "Hey, John, evolution, not revolution." Meaning that on some of these big, complex, difficult things, find a few things that are working somewhere and evolve and grow those incrementally over time. So, is it going to take 15, 20 years? Maybe. Is it going to take 3 to 5 years? Maybe. But I think with some good best practices and promising practices that are going on out there right now and sharing what is working, we have places in a few of the counties right now where somebody can go in for a broken arm, and by the time they leave, they've been taken care of for a dental issue, a behavioral health issue, and they have a counselor assigned, and it's all fully funded through an integrative care insurance model. So it can be done. It can be done, but the traditional large insurance models don't support that right now or yet. And there's reasons they don't support it. And there can be things done at the legislative level that can maybe help them lean more in that direction. So that's a big undertaking for a guy that has no background in the medical field. But what I've learned over the course of my career is you don't have to know a lot about a lot of things. You just have to surround yourself with smart people. And if you surround yourself with people like Vince, you can get some really amazing things done. And the other thing I've learned pretty recently in this job is that this state has money. We just went from the 16th largest economy in the world. We just passed Spain. We're now the 15th largest economy in the world if we were a country. So the next country that will probably pass in the spring is Australia, and then we'll be the 14th. The goal, we have this thing called the 2030 Blueprint, the Florida Chamber of Commerce 2030 Blueprint. The goal for the state of Florida is to be the 10th largest global economy by 2030. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me before I came into this job, but now that I've seen the money and resources that the private sector does have in this state, there's tons of capability and capacity to do some phenomenal stuff. I mean, you start talking about kids and the youth in this state, and you think about that strategically as the future workforce of our state, there's a lot of private sector that is willing to put money and resources towards taking care of that incredibly valuable resource, our kids. And so I'm seeing a lot of things pushing towards us focusing on the youth throughout the state. Great example is we're partnering with a program called the Champions Program. It's been around for 21 years. It started as a childhood obesity program in the state, in the Panhandle, and now they've had over 120,000 kids go through the program. And it's a program that focuses on public and charter school PE programs for K through 8. And so they have access, the county superintendents that have allowed this program in, they give the Champions Program access to every single one of the students in these K through 8 schools. And the data, the obesity data improvements from starting from kindergarten through 8th grade and comparing it to similar demographics around the country. It's the only place in the country getting this type of return on investment, so to speak. And they're also finding emotional and behavioral health measurements improving in these kids as well. So, at first I was like, yeah, a PE program. What's that have to do with behavioral health? And when you start looking at things like the juvenile welfare system and recidivism, the kids coming back into this, the kids that have gone through the Champions program, their test scores are better. There's less of them ending up in juvie in these lower socioeconomic regions of the state. Of course, their physical and things like their body mass index and their physicality improves, but with that improves the kid's self-confidence. So here's an example of how the Champions program runs one of their PE programs. If you're little Johnny and you're overweight and you go to do your 1 mile run test, the old way of scoring it, if you got last in the class and you got below a certain time, you might get a D or an F. But now, if you're putting the effort forth and you're doing better than you did last time, or maybe your heart rate is above a certain threshold or whatever, you're now getting an A plus or an A, even though you might finish in the end of your class. Imagine what that does to a kid's self-confidence. So just little nuggets like that. It's amazing. It's quality program that DeSantis's kids are going through it in one of the private schools and 7 counties. And how many schools we got right now? I'm not sure how many schools, but it's in 7 counties. And the goal is to grow that out to all 67 counties. But that's just one example of a relatively small program that we have the ability to scale out across the state because of the relationships we have in industry in the private sector here in the state of Florida. It's pretty powerful tool that we have at our disposal, and very unique relationships at the state legislature level. So when our representatives and our senators get together to do to balance the budget and get together for their session each year, they'll lean into the chamber and ask for things that we're looking for that are good for the state and good for the business community. So we'll help organizations out like that as well.
The implications are massive.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to think the Chamber of Commerce was the phone number you would call to see what the weather was going to be for your vacation someplace. That's what Chamber of Commerce used to mean to me when I was like in college. I see what these guys are doing, what we're doing, and I'm blown away. I mean, it is powerful. I mean, we have an entire government affairs and political operations segment of the Chamber of Commerce, which I had no idea. And it's a really good tool for business across the state, and this state is just going gangbusters. It's pretty impressive. I think it's like an average of like 900 people, 900 people a day over the course of the last 5 years moving into the state of Florida. Don't quote me on that. I've heard numbers between 800 and 1,000, depending how far back towards COVID you go. But it's at the end of the day, it ends up being close to the size of Orlando moving into the state each year. And, of course, all the infrastructure adjustments that are going to go with that. And all the money that's required, all the new drivers coming on the roads. Yeah.
They're coming from California.
It's an interesting place to be living right now.
No doubt. Is there anything you might like to ask me or anything you might like to talk about that we haven't discussed today?
What do you when you talk to a lot of people, and it seems like behavioral health is one of your passions. What do you see as one of the biggest issues that's out there, especially for our younger folks?
I feel like that the standard of perfection, I think it's the way the human brain works. We want to be perfect and we want to be admired, and we're all subject to human nature and social media. I'm not on any personally, but I've seen what it's like for my children and their friends and my friends. And it's tough, even if it's innocent, something like Facebook where everyone makes their life look perfect. And
Hmm.
then I look at it and I might feel bad because my life, at least in my mind, is not perfect. Of course, everyone feels that way. So it's a paradox. No
Yeah,
one's life is perfect.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I'm not picking on social media. I just feel like that trying to be the ideal or the personification of what I think I should be, which is all just a made up thing in my head. And TV tells us what we should wear. It, Social media maybe tells us what kind of car we should drive, what kind of shoes where we should go to dinner, all these things. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I do know just talking to you. Like as I get older and the more and more that I know, the less and less I want. I want less of everything and less of
Mhm.
a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had the house on the lake and I don't have it now, and I'm just as happy. I'm happier.
Ah,
No
okay,
maintenance.
okay.
And I still visit the same lake for the same amount of time for 20% of the cost and none of the headaches.
Twenty
Um,
percent of the cost.
I
Well,
remember when my
I need to hear that, because for the longest time we wanted to live on a seawall here in St. Pete, and then last year when Helene and then Milton 2 weeks later came, and I saw all my buddies on the seawall and all the drama they're dealing with. I was like, you know what, baby, this house is just fine. Elevation 55 feet on top of Mount St. Pete. We're good. Let's
no
just stay
doubt.
here.
So this is like a story I tell occasionally that just blew me away. When my daughter was like 6 years old, um, our neighbor had one of those little scooter things. It's got the handles up here and you
Yeah,
stand
yeah.
on it. There's no motor in it. It's just a scooter. And it was pink and there was a picture of Cinderella on it.
Oh,
And my daughter said, I want one of those. And I said, sure, no problem. So there was like a used equipment place near our house, sporting equipment. And I went there and she was with me. And I said, there's one. It's exactly like your friend's. And she didn't say anything. And I bought it. And we got in the car and we're driving home. And she started crying.
uh-oh.
And I said, what's the matter? And she said, it doesn't have a Cinderella on it. And I'm thinking she just wants a scooter so that she can go around. But she's thinking she needs to have Cinderella. And I think that's indicative of like the human condition. Like I think I need to be there, but I'm here. And therefore I can't be happy until I'm there. And of course, Dan Sullivan, the famous consultant up in Toronto, he would say that is called the necessary lie. I tell myself once I'm there, I'll be happy. And then when I get there, I'm not happy. And I tell myself I need to be somewhere else. So, like money, he would say, if I could just make 50,000, then I would be happy. And then you get to 50, and you're like, if I could just make 75, and you get to 75, if I could just make 100. And he said, true happiness does not lie at any one of these. True happiness lies in the moment and just trying to be present. Like you and I are present in the moment. And to me, that's the biggest gift I can give anyone. And
I've
I
heard
try
that
to,
called I think the hedonic treadmill. Does that sound right?
no, could
Hedonic
be.
treadmill. I think I've heard that where no matter where you get to on that success curve, it's one up, one more, one more, one more.
Yeah. And I'll never get there and then I'll die. But to
Yeah.
me, I want to take whatever task it is I have in the time that I have, and I want to do my best to execute on that task in the time that I have. and that I can be happy doing that. And it's not more stuff and more, I like the game of trying to excel at my work and stuff, but no amount of money is going to make me happy. No amount of prestige is going to make me happy. No amount of stuff.
You
But
got kids?
yeah, I have two daughters, 21 and 23, and they're both super hard workers. Never
Awesome.
gave us any trouble. And they're both graduated from school. The younger one left high school at 16 and
Oh, wow.
went and graduated college at 21 from TCU.
Woo.
Just non-traditional
Yeah,
approach. Went to community college at 16. And the older one went to college. She went to LSU and then she went to Union College up near us here. And now she's in grad school.
right on.
But
That's
nothing
great.
like SEC football, though.
Oh,
So,
man. I thought I'd been to football games. And then I went to my first SEC game when Ryan was a freshman.
yeah,
Holy smokes. Wow.
that's awesome. I've been I've never been to Auburn for a game. I've been to Alabama for a game and been to LSU dozens of
Okay.
times. I've seen
Well, then
LSU play
Yeah.
Auburn when was it Cam? What was the great quarterback there? He ended up playing for Carolina Panthers. I forget
Oh,
his
Cam
name.
Newton?
Yeah, Cam Newton when he was playing there.
We were at a game. I think it was a Georgia game.
Mm-hmm.
And my son got me into the student section. It was hilarious. I was pretending to be the oldest PhD student ever at Auburn University. But so, but they brought Cam Newton out at halftime and they retired his number and his whole family and all his kids and all that stuff. Really, really a cool thing to see live right there in front of us. And yeah,
He was
and
amazing.
that guy got a standing ovation that lasted like 5 minutes.
He was
It was,
amazing. Like he was amazing. Prescott was amazing. Mississippi State. That
yeah,
the guy who plays for the Cowboys. You couldn't tackle these guys in college. It's
yeah.
crazy. Big quarterbacks. But I love SEC football. But neither of my kids went to SEC school. However, the younger one, Fiona, her freshman year or sophomore year, because she was a transfer, TCU went to the national championship game, and we went to see the game against Michigan, which they
Right.
won, and then the game against
Yeah.
Georgia, which they lost. But it was a great experience, though.
Yeah. They were like undefeated that season, weren't they? Until the
Until
championship game.
they lost to Kansas State, I think, and then they beat
Yeah.
Michigan in the playoff, and then lost to Georgia. But I
Well,
love college football, or I think I do. It's changed a lot in the last 2 years, with the portal.
I'll always like college football more than pro. I just the young energy, even though there's more money in the portal and all these weird things now in the NCAA, but I still college football, and that's my favorite.
They do seem to play for the love of the game more than,
Yes.
they're less cynical
Yes.
than the
Yeah.
pros, I think.
Yeah. Less controlled by the dollar sign. But
No doubt. So, I often ask this question: do you know the most important punctuation in the English language?
punctuation,
Mm-hmm.
comma.
I like to say it's the hyphen, and I say it's the hyphen because
Let
it's
me guess.
between. Go ahead.
On the tombstone.
Yes. I
Yeah,
think you're
am
the
I
only
right?
person. Yeah, you're the only person that's ever guessed
I've
it.
I've heard that before somewhere. The hyphen, and let me. I'll paraphrase my understanding. Tell me if I'm close. It ain't the number that it starts with, and it ain't the number that it ends with. It's the dash that counts.
Amen. So if I'm describing you to someone or if someone were describing you to someone 100 years from now who didn't have the opportunity to know you, what would you want that person to know about you?
That I hopefully was a good husband and father, and taught my kids, and hopefully by extension grandkids and great grandkids, that helping people is one of the most powerful things you can do in life, is helping others less fortunate than yourself. I think that would be that's a good dash thing to live by.
I agree. There's a lot of opportunity for us
Yeah,
to be helpful.
yeah, and there's a lot of people that need the help.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
shortage.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope we get to meet in person one of these days. And I really
Hey,
appreciate you.
Vince is good at making that kind of stuff happen.
No doubt about it.
Maybe we all get together at JJ's. It's my favorite place in St. Pete, and we all get together for breakfast or coffee or something.
So are you still living in St. Pete or did you move
Mm-hmm.
to Okay, all righty.
Yep,
Well, that's
I'm in St.
convenient.
Petersburg, and then I'm in Tallahassee the first week of each month.
We should plan it because my dad's in Inglewood. It's not too far.
See? So let's definitely stay in touch.
Will do. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate all the time and enjoyed being on your show. Let's do it again.
Happy Thanksgiving. All right.
Happy
Take care.
Thanksgiving. Much to be
Bye-bye.
grateful for.
You were great. If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.